All right, let's unpack what the President had to say today. Bonang Mohale, Business Unity South Africa President, joins us now live. Bonang, thanks for your time. Always a pleasure talking to you. Were you at all relieved to hear the President testify at the SAHRC, given what he said about how government has handled that situation?
Absolutely energized and emboldened. Now we need to look at the credibility gap between talking tough and doing tough, especially because the dirty dozen are known. All of us received the WhatsApp messages that said, ban everything. The Minister of Police, Ubabu Begitlele, has published 19 names. 9 months later, none of the kingpins have been arrested to date, let alone charged, convicted, sentenced, so that they should serve time. Just to remind ourselves, Shahan, my dear brother, when one takes the tally on the 19th of July, remember more than 354 lives had been lost, 150,000 jobs were put at risk, 5,000 informal traders were decimated, 146 schools were vandalized or had equipment stolen, whilst one school was destroyed in a fire within 1 hour of this starting in KwaZulu-Natal. 40,000 businesses were affected. 200 shopping centers were looted and damaged. 3,000 stores were destroyed. 300 banks and post office outlets were vandalized. I'm not even talking about the 1,400 ATMs that were destroyed and 120 million rand that was stolen. 161 liquor outlets were also affected. 113 communications infrastructure was significantly damaged. 11 warehouses, 8 factories were also destroyed, with 1.5 billion worth of stock lost in just KwaZulu-Natal. Remember, Massmart, in releasing the results, said they had lost 1.3 billion rands worth of stock. GDP impact, 20 billion just in KwaZulu-Natal. When you include Gauteng, that's 50 billion. About 1.5 million rounds of ammunition was stolen from a container at a prospecting depot in KwaZulu-Natal. Clicks United Pharmaceutical Distributors looted. Cipla Pharmaceutical Company factory was also destroyed, my dear brother. Shahan, back to you.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, because I'm trying to unpack everything the President said at this hearing, because you know last month the Treasurer General, Dondo Mokhajane, said that South Africa is starting to show signs of a failed state. Today, the President contradicted that statement. He says South Africa is not a failed state and will not ever get there. What's your opinion on that?
You know, never is a long time. All I know is that history is replete with examples that countries like farms, like airlines, take long to face. When you look at what the investors, the foreign analysts, and the people who are meant to do business with us, they're looking at 4 things and 4 things only. Number one, it's economic strength, fiscal strength, institutional strength, and susceptibility to major risk events. So on all of those, we don't tick well as a country, and indeed as a people with great natural endowments. First, we talk about the 9 wasted years of state capture. We should be talking about probably 28 years of state capture. The vaccine rollout, we could have done better, especially addressing the issue of hesitancy. Now the expiry date as if we didn't know. But remember, we are also talking about, we are still in a recession, that in fact, we are still suffering from the downgrades that increased the cost of borrowing for government, for businesses, but for Shihan and Bonang, for the same quantum of debt. But also, by the time the pandemic found us, we're already vulnerable. I'm not even talking about these 2 weeks in July or the 8 days where we cut our own nose to spite our face. So when we put other events on top of this, like the Canada truck driver strike, but also the unwarranted, unprovoked, unjustified occupation of Ukraine by Russia. It affects not only the price of wheat, but we have already seen how the price of energy, and petrol is only a small component of that, has actually gone up, precipitating governments the world over to try and take evasive action like we did, reducing our fuel price by R1.50 per litre, Shan.
Yeah. And lastly, let's talk about the issue of safety and security in South Africa. The president at the time mentioned that he was going to address that in particular. He's made several changes in the NPA, the State Security Agency, and now a new National Police Commissioner being announced yesterday. The president today telling the commission that we will not have, or he's doing everything in his power to ensure that we don't see another unrest like we saw in July. Do you believe that?
The precipitating factors that led to that are still there. The ANC internal strife and wars are still there. What we have seen in Mpumalanga and Limpopo, the court challenges dismissed today, still there. The Premier League is still there. The people that said just 5 days after the president won in Nazareth, that comrades, it will take us only 5 years. 5 years are still there. Every hour they are plotting to undermine this constitutional democracy. And Shahan, for me, I think when we want to look at the evidence of what's really underlying this, we need to go back and say, I think as a country, as a people with great natural endowments, we ought to be investing for growth, not on the consumption side, because if we don't, the 2 weeks in July is going to happen again and again. Secondly, we need to invest in infrastructure because it has a long-term span. Thirdly, I think we need to take seriously this notion of network industries, ports, harbors, but also the availability of spectrum, digital migration. The auction helped raise 14.6 billion rand. There's still more that is available. The last three for me is this notion of a capable state. In 28 years, we have demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt that we have no political will to bring that in. And of course, the Zondo report number 1, number 2, and indeed number 3, especially when you look at number 3 that talks about Bosasa, you are left with no option but to conclude that actually it is this ANC-led government that is an organized crime syndicate. Lastly, the issue of law and order, crime and security. Because without law and order, who are we and what are we if not anarchy, mayhem, and everybody doing as they like? As you can see with Operations Tudula, as you can see with vigilantism, but also what should shock us is the Amabona Mogudela in KwaZulu-Natal, who for the last 3 years have been harassing the more than 740 state-owned enterprises and companies, going mostly to construction companies, say, we want equity for free, you must hire people from our own faction. They shot in absolute daylight the general manager at Richards Bay Minerals, and up until today, zero action, Shahan.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, honesty, and your insights. Always a pleasure talking to you. Bonang Mohale, Business Unity South Africa President.